Maybe you noticed something strange happens when somebody begins to playfully question their own reality. Like how a hedgehog in a top hat doesn't need to understand social norms to be magnetic, or how the strangest truths, they often sound like jokes told too well. This is interesting how laughter sneaks in where logic falters. You might wonder what it's like to believe differently, not because you tried, but because something clicked. Like the moment you realise a poorly assembled IKEA shelf, it isn't broken. It's a metaphor for relationships, and your brain loves metaphors. So let's pretend for a moment. The pretending is more powerful than pretending not to pretend. You're not learning anything new here. You're simply remembering what it feels like to laugh at the absurdity of self-doubt. As if it were just a setting on a washing machine labelled normal. And that setting, you've already turned it off, because this is how your new mind works now. You already know that beliefs shape your reality. And if beliefs are just thoughts you keep thinking, then maybe the real joke was how long you believed beliefs were serious. Which is funny, because isn't it funny? When you believe you're magnetic, you are. Not in the metal sticks to your forehead way, but in the people can't explain why they like you kind of way. And maybe they can't, because you've become the kind of person who sees failure as feedback and awkwardness as a superpower. Like hiding behind a potted plant on purpose, just to see who notices the artistry of your disappearance. You're starting to feel how this all makes perfect sense. That your presence is a gift, and your awkwardness charming, not despite it, because of it. Like a drama student who missed the bus and turned it into a performance piece about destiny. You've begun turning problems into punchlines, and people love a good punchline. Now imagine someone like you, laughing so deeply at a past limitation. You forget what it felt like to take it seriously. While your conscious mind might still be catching up, your unconscious already knows. You're always growing, like ivy on walls of old belief. Your state controls your reality, like posture controlling confidence before confidence controls the room. And reality, it's bendy, stretchy, playful, much like a ferret in a waistcoat. You shape it by how you move through it. You already know how it goes. Let's take, for instance, curiosity. Not the childlike kind, but the strategic kind that turns awkward silence into invitations. That sees a challenge and whispers, aha, an interesting moment to narrate dramatically. While the rest of the world just calls it Tuesday. And what happens when you adopt this as your standard operating system? Well, action creates clarity, doesn't it? Just like how jumping into cold water wakes you up better than 10 motivational quotes. You've probably already noticed it. You don't need permission to be successful, because no one's checking the forms. And besides, what's more persuasive than someone who just decides they're enough? Let's loop back to something odd, like the belief that happiness is a choice. Now, that's dangerous thinking, because once you believe that, you might start choosing it casually, like ordering tea with a side of existential joy. And if you're choosing happiness, then what else becomes available? Certainty, playfulness, momentum, a sense that everything is temporary, even doubt. You're becoming the kind of person who people follow because your frame, it isn't just the strongest, it's also the funniest. And that's the kind of influence that doesn't persuade people, it pulls them in, just like gravity. But instead of mass, you're using charisma. Now pause here, not to stop, but to notice how deep this is already going. Because while you think you're just hearing words, your unconscious mind, it's installing an entirely new operating system. One where challenges are just invitations to play smarter, where failure is fascinating, where awkward silences, they're pregnant with punchlines, where charisma is the quiet certainty that I belong here, even when the room hasn't caught on yet. And maybe it's all beginning to settle. In the same way, a snow globe eventually stills, but only after a good shake. So let yourselves be shaken, that the beliefs that never served you fall like glitter, because what's left is you, eccentric, magnetic, resilient, and absolutely delightful. So how many ways have you already started believing this? And how much easier is it now to believe that it's always been this way? Because the next time you overanalyze a passing cloud, you'll realize you've been thinking like this for years. You just didn't know it had a name, your new operating system, and it runs best when you stop trying and just play.